Welcome to Hollywood Graveyard, where we set out to remember and celebrate the lives of those who lived to entertain us by visiting their final resting places. Today, we're back at Forest Lawn in the Hollywood Hills to visit such stars as Matthew Perry, Bob Newhart, Aaron Carter, Bob Barker, and many more. Join us, won't you? Forest Lawn, Hollywood Hills is the sister cemetery to the original Forest Lawn in Glendale. This location was opened in the 1950s and is notable for its park-like format. This was the very first cemetery we ever visited on this channel back in 2017, and we've done a total of 6 tour videos here to date, the last one being in 2022. It's always fun to go back and meet some new folks and pay our respects to others we've lost since. If you haven't done so already, be sure to check out our first 6 tour videos of this cemetery. Alright then, come along with me and my shadow to find some famous graves here in the Hollywood Hills. Let's begin just in from the entrance on the right, in the Sheltering Hills section. If you saw our third video here, you'll recall that several years back we visited what was at that time the future grave site of Bob Barker, which had been marked prior to his death. Since that time, the legendary game show host has passed away, and this once future site is now his current home. Bob Barker was a beloved staple on television for decades, known particularly for his tenure hosting game shows. He got his start hosting Truth or Consequences in the 50s. Then in 1972, Barker landed the hosting job on the show for which he is best known, The Price is Right. It would be the longest running game show in TV history, and Bob would host The Price is Right over 35 seasons in an estimated more than 3,500 episodes.
And now, here is the star of The Price is Right, Bob Barker! Welcome to The Price is Right. Thank you for that wonderful welcome.
He retired from the show in 2007, by which time he'd become a cultural icon. Bob would make appearances on other shows and movies as well, including a memorable cameo on Happy Gilmore. Bob Barker lived to be 99. The section across the street east is known as Churchyard Section, so named for its proximity to the White Church. Here's the grave of Joseph Mascolo. The actor is best remembered for his numerous appearances in daytime soap operas, perhaps most notably as Stefano De Mira on Days of Our Lives, in more than 1,800 episodes. He also played Massimo Morone on The Bold and the Beautiful in close to 500 episodes. Other shows include From These Roots, Santa Barbara, and General Hospital. And his films include Jaws 2 and Heat. Joseph died from complications of Alzheimer's at age 87. Just south of here is Enduring Faith section. Near the road is the grave of Olan Soule. The actor was a leading man on radio and kept very busy as a supporting player in film and television. He became well known on the radio in the 30s and 40s, performing for 11 years on the daytime soap opera Bachelor's Children, and for 9 years on the First Nighter program. He then became a reputable character actor in Hollywood, amassing close to 300 credits throughout his career. He made appearances on shows like Dragnet, My Three Sons, Petticoat Junction, The Twilight Zone Bonanza, and many more. And you fans of Batman will be curious to know that Olan was the very first actor to voice Batman in animated form, in several animated series beginning in 1968.
What kind of bird has an emperor species? Why, the penguin! Exactly. But what's he up to? Good question. Let's run it through the Bat computer and see what we get.
And his big screen appearances include State and Maine and The Towering Inferno. Olan died from lung cancer at age 84. Right across the street is Eternal Love section. Right near the road and a tree is the grave of Jack Marshall, aka Dr. Deep. He was a musician, particularly known as a guitar player and also an arranger, producer, and conductor. He was one of Capitol Records' top producers and arrangers in the 50s and 60s. He would arrange songs for notable stars like Judy Garland and Peggy Lee, including her hit Fever. As a guitarist, he released several albums of his own, and played as a sideman for other artists like Harry James, Louis Prima, and Chet Baker. And if you're a fan of the Munsters like me, then it's likely you can hum from memory the theme song of the classic monster comedy. Jack Marshall wrote the Munsters theme and incidental music, which would be nominated for a Grammy in 1965. Jack was just 51 when he died. But let's head east to the other end of this lawn to find the grave of Junius Matthews, a master of performing arts. He began his career on the Broadway stage and made his screen debut in 1917's The Silent Witness. Into the 20s, he made his way onto radio, showcasing his unique voice, including playing the Tin Man on the radio production of The Wizard of Oz, and numerous roles in westerns. On television, he made appearances on shows like The Gene Autry Show, Dragnet, and The Real McCoys. But audiences today perhaps best remember Junius as the voice of Rabbit in the Winnie the Pooh animations in the 60s and 70s.
Rabbit, isn't that you? No. But isn't that the rabbit's voice?
I don't think so. It isn't meant to be.
Hello, Rabbit.
Oh, hello, Pooh Bear. Pooh Bear!
Junius also voiced Archimedes in The Sword and the Stone. He died at age 87, not long after the release of The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. Back across the street once again, we proceed to the southeastern section of Enduring Faith. Up the hill and under a tree is the grave of Mildred Burke. We've featured a lot of professional wrestlers on this channel. Mildred was a rare female professional wrestler. She'd rise to world champion on 3 different occasions during her heyday in the 30s to the 50s. She held the NWA World Women's Championship for almost 20 years. She actually got her start wrestling men at carnivals in the 30s, winning most of her bouts against these men. Mildred was also a powerful advocate in these early years in bringing recognition and acceptance of women in professional wrestling. She would be inducted into numerous halls of fame, including the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame, the Women's Wrestling Hall of Fame, and the WWE Hall of Fame. And just recently, a biopic was released about the life of Mildred Burke, titled Queen of the Ring. She died from a stroke at age 73. We're just down the street from Warner Brothers Studios here at Forest Lawn. Here in the Murmuring Trees section next to the road is a notable figure from the golden age of animation at Warner Brothers, Bob Clampett. Bob began working with Harmon and Ising, then Leon Schlesinger, in the 1930s, when the budding animation studios were trying their hand at competing with Disney. Bob and early collaborator Tex Avery were instrumental in developing the more irreverent and zany style of animation and comedy that Warner Brothers would be known for, the Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies. Bob would create and design some of the studio's most iconic characters, including Porky Pig, Daffy Duck, and Tweety. He started out as an animator, but rose to be one of the studio's great directors of animation. After leaving Warner Brothers, he created his own shows, including a puppet show called Time for Beanie, and an animated series, Beanie and Cecil. Bob Clampett, who will always be remembered for the laughter he brought to the world, died from a heart attack at age 70. Across the street and a little farther south is Morning Light section. Getting our exercise in for the day, we climbed the hill to find the grave of Dan Duryea. He rose to fame on Broadway playing Leo in The Little Foxes alongside Bette Davis. He would reprise the role in the screen adaptation in 1941. This would be the start of a promising career in film and television. In the years that followed, he appeared in The Pride of the Yankees and often portrayed villains in westerns like Black Bart and Along Came Jones, and films noir like Too Late for Tears and Scarlet Street. Later in his career, he'd move into television, playing China Smith and Eddie Jacks on Peyton Place. He also made appearances on shows like Combat, Wagon Train Laramie, and more. Dan died from cancer at age 61. Just a few spaces away is the grave of David Wolper. He was a notable producer of film and television. Shows David was responsible for include Roots and The Thornbirds. And big screen productions of Wolper's include LA Confidential and Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. He's also remembered for producing the opening and closing ceremonies for the 1984 Olympics, and his work in documentaries, like The Race for Space, which earned him an Oscar nomination. Wolper died from Parkinson's and heart disease at age 82. Continuing east, we cross back over the street to Murmuring Trees. Meet Barbra Fuller. The actress was best known for her voice work, particularly on radio. She began acting on soap operas and serials in the 30s, eventually appearing in around 25 serials, and by some estimates portraying upwards of 1,000 different characters on the radio. Perhaps her best known role of this era was as Claudia in One Man's Family, a role she played for 14 years. She soon relocated to California to appear in film and television. Her films include Flame of Youth and Alias the Champ, and television appearances include on Adventures of Superman, My Three Sons, and Perry Mason. Barbra lived to be 102. Southeast is Bright Eternity. In these grounds we find a legend of television comedy, Bob Newhart. He got his start as a stand-up comedian known for his deadpan style and slight stammer. He developed an act in which he played a solo straight man carrying on a one-sided telephone conversation. His 1960 comedy album would be the first to rank #1 on the Billboard charts and won 2 Grammys. This success led to opportunities in television. Bob would star in 2 namesake sitcoms in the 70s and 80s.
Hello?
In The Bob Newhart Show, he played psychologist Bob Hartley. The show ran from 1972 to 1978. In 1982, he launched a new sitcom simply titled Newhart, which ran until 1990. In it, he played a Vermont innkeeper. The series finale would become one of the most memorable in television history, and tied in with his first series. I won't spoil it here for those of you who haven't seen it yet. Later in his career, Bob would appear on shows like The Big Bang Theory, earning an Emmy in the process. Bob would take his talents to the big screen as well, including voicing Bernard on The Rescuers and playing Papa Elf in Elf.
Come here, little one. Ain't it thrilling? Puppy wants to see you.
Though your nose get a little chilly. Buddy, we'll frolic and play the Eskimo way.
The all-around funny guy lived to be 94. Southeast in this same section, near the walls of the Lincoln Terrace, is the grave of Burny Mattinson. We are right across the freeway from Disney Animation, so it's fitting that in these grounds are a number of Disney legends, including Burny here. The talented artist and writer worked for Disney from 1953 until his death in 2023, in various capacities and on a number of notable films. As an animator, he worked on films like Lady and the Tramp, Sleeping Beauty, Robin Hood, and more. And as a director, he was nominated for an Oscar for Mickey's Christmas Carol, and was also co-director of The Great Mouse Detective. Throughout the 90s, Burny worked as storyboard artist and writer on nearly every Disney theatrical film, including Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and The Lion King. His 70-year career with Disney is said to be the longest of anyone, and in 2008, Burny was named a Disney legend. He lived to be 87. Just south is the Lincoln Terrace. Here's the grave of George Duke. He was a musician known as a keyboardist, singer, and songwriter. He would release more than 30 solo albums in his career, including 1979's Brazilian Love Affair. He would also collaborate with other musicians like Frank Zappa. And as a duet with Stanley Clarke, he had a hit in the song Sweet Baby. George Duke would also produce a number of hits for other artists, including Let's Hear It for the Boy from the Footloose soundtrack. He was inducted into the Soul Music Hall of Fame in 2012. George Duke lived to be 67. Not far from George, we find the grave of Tony Pope. The actor was particularly known for his voice work in cartoons. Tony did quite a bit of work for Disney. He was one of the actors to take over from the original voice of Goofy, Pinto Colvig, voicing Goofy in the 70s and 80s, including in Who Framed Roger Rabbit and at Disneyland. He also had a notable career in anime, voicing characters in Akira and in Metropolis. And if you had a Furby in the 90s, Tony voiced that too. He died from complications during surgery at age 56. Straight east is a section we've visited many times in the past, the Court of Liberty section. Into the Gardens of Heritage we find the grave of John Aniston. The actor was known for his work on television, perhaps most notably playing Victor on the soap opera Days of Our Lives, over 3 decades and in a whopping 2,750 episodes. The role earned him an Emmy nomination. Other shows include Search for Tomorrow and guest appearances on shows like Mad Men, The West Wing, Gilmore Girls, and more. John Aniston lived to be 89. You may have guessed that he was the father of Friends actress Jennifer Aniston. The Greek quote here on his marker is from Socrates and translates as, "The good man cannot be harmed, whether in life or in death." Continuing east, we arrive at a newer columbarium near a fountain, the Columbarium of Commemoration. Here's the niche of Aaron Carter. He was a singer who rose to fame as a teen pop icon in the 90s. Following in his brother's footsteps, Nick Carter of the Backstreet Boys, Aaron released a self-titled debut album in 1997 at age 9. His first 3 albums would go platinum.
People all around, you got to. Everyone together, sing it loud. Jump all around, come on.
He did songs for films like Jimmy Neutron and began appearing on television, including as himself on Sabrina the Teenage Witch and Lizzie McGuire. On Broadway, he appeared in the musical Seussical. On November 5th, 2022, Aaron's body was discovered in his bathtub, having accidentally drowned after inhaling difluoroethane and taking alprazolam. He was just 34. Also here in the Gardens of Heritage, we find a talented artist named Tyrus Wong, who we visited previously in our Disney special. He was born in China and came to California at the age of 9. Here he would establish himself as one of the most celebrated Asian American artists of the 20th century. He began doing production art for the movies in the 40s, perhaps most notably for the 1942 Disney film Bambi. It was the art of Tyrus Wong that gave the film its unique painterly look, which took inspiration from Song Dynasty art. His backgrounds were considered revolutionary at the time. Tyrus was also a production illustrator for Warner Brothers, including set designs, concept art, and storyboards. He was part of the art department on films like Gypsy, Camelot, Wait Until Dark, Mildred Pierce, Rebel Without a Cause, Giant Sands of Iwo Jima, and many more. Later in life, he designed popular greeting cards for Hallmark, and his art would be featured in exhibits at museums in Los Angeles. In 2015, a documentary about his life was released titled Tyrus. He lived an astounding 106 years. I hear the peal of thunder as a storm moves in on the second half of our tour. This is Peaceful Memory. Near the road is the grave of Azar Mohebi, known professionally as Ramesh. She was a popular Persian singer from Iran. She was born in Tehran and began her career singing in the 1960s with a hit in the song Rivers. She continued her singing career for 14 years, but after the Iranian Revolution, restrictions were placed on female singers by the clerical regime, and so she fled Iran, refusing to sing under the regime. She lived in the UK for a time before eventually moving to LA. Here she released additional music, voicing the hardship of women in Iran. Eventually she decided to stop singing altogether to protest the banning of women's singing rights in Iran. She died from a heart attack at the age of 70. A few raindrops begin to fall as we reach Blessed Assurance to the north. Here's the grave of Gary Crosby. He was an actor and singer, popular in the 50s and 60s. He made his film debut as himself in 1942's Star-Spangled Rhythm. He'd go on to have prominent roles in films like A Private's Affair and Girl Happy. On television, he's remembered for playing Eddie on The Bill Dana Show and Ed Wells on Adam 12. He also appeared on the last filmed episode of The Twilight Zone, Come Wander With Me. Gary was the son of legendary crooner Bing Crosby and actress Dixie Lee. 6 years after his father's death, he wrote a best-selling memoir titled Going My Own Way, telling the life of growing up the son of celebrities. Crosby died from lung cancer at age 62. Just a little further west is Tribute Section. Not far in from the road, we find the grave of Mary Dean. She was an actress and songwriter. She got her start appearing on the big screen as a singer in films like A Damsel in Distress and Cinderella Jones. She'd go on to appear on shows like Dragnet and The Cisco Kid, and even did some voice work as well, like in Heavy Traffic. As a songwriter, Mary co-wrote the song Half-Breed, which was a hit for Cher in 1973. She lived to be 73, passing away from emphysema in 1995. We arrive now at another familiar section on this channel, the Courts of Remembrance. Into the columbarium of remembrance, we find the niche of Art Kassel. He was a musician, a songwriter, saxophonist, and band leader from the 20s into the 60s. He got his start playing engagements in the Chicago area, playing dance music in ballrooms. He rose to national attention on the radio in the late 20s and began releasing recordings as well. Two of his compositions would become hits, Doodle Doodle Doo and Hell's Bells, both of which have been heard on the soundtracks of numerous film and TV shows in the years since. He toured with his band, Castles in the Air, for 25 consecutive years, and in the 50s landed in Southern California, performing with a new band on television. Art died from cancer at age 69. Art's neighbor here on the opposite wall is an actress named Marie Wilson. She was an actress of radio, film, and television known particularly for zany comedies. She's remembered for her role in the media franchise My Friend Irma, playing the title character on radio, in 2 films, and on the television series. Between the 3, she portrayed Irma from 1947 to 1954. In doing so, she'd be recognized with 3 stars on the Walk of Fame, one of the very few to be honored for radio, film, and television. Other films include Satan Met a Lady and Boy Meets Girl. Marie died from cancer at age 56. Making our way now to the furthest courtyard east, we head into the Columbarium of Providence. This is the niche of Tutti Camarata. He was a composer, arranger, trumpeter, and record producer. Early in his career, he'd work as a trumpeter and arranger for big band greats like Jimmy Dorsey and Benny Goodman. He then began publishing his own songs in the 40s. In 1956, Walt Disney hired Camarata to form, direct, and produce for the label Disneyland Records. He produced over 300 albums during his association with Disney over the next 17 years. His work would lead to being honored as a Disney legend in 2003. Tutti also developed the legendary Sunset Sound and Sound Factory recording studios here in Los Angeles, among the most iconic recording sites in the music industry. He lived to be 91. Below Tutti, we find the niche of Bob Steele, real name Robert Bradbury. The actor had more than 200 credits to his name, known particularly for his lead roles in numerous Western films in the 30s and 40s. He was one of the big cowboy stars in B-movies of the era. He also had supporting roles in a number of notable films like The Big Sleep, Hang 'em High, and Of Mice and Men. On television, he's remembered for playing Trooper Duffy on F Troop and appearing on shows like The Life and Legend of Wyatt Earp and The Magical World of Disney. Bob died from emphysema at age 81. Bob had a twin brother, Bill, also interned here. Early on, the two were hired to appear together in a silent series called The Adventures of Bob and Bill, consisting of 15 two-reel episodes. Bill also dubbed John Wayne's singing voice in Riders of Destiny. But while Bob continued to pursue his career in show business, Bill was drawn elsewhere. He used the money he made in the movies to pay for medical school and became a doctor. Bill lived to be 64. In our very first video here, we visited legendary actor Rod Steiger of On the Waterfront and In the Heat of the Night fame. Now resting here with Rod is his wife, Joan Benedict, also an actress. She would appear alongside her husband in 2 films, Frozen in Fear and A Month of Sundays. Other films include The Prize Fighter and The Happy Hooker Goes to Washington. She also had roles on television in soap operas like Days of Our Lives, and appearances on other shows like TJ Hooker and Fantasy Island. Joan was also passionate about the stage, earning accolades for her one-woman show about Leona Helmsley. She died from complications of a stroke at age 96. One of the creative disciplines of filmmaking that we haven't touched on much on this channel is prop making. Around the corner north, we find the niche of Don Post. He was a mask and prop fabricator. Specifically, Don was a pioneer of over-the-head rubber masks. In 1938, he founded the Halloween Mask Company, which sold these masks. Don revolutionized the use of latex in mask making. His studio became an official licensee for Universal Studios for their line of monster masks. In 1978, a modified Don Post mask of William Shatner was used in the slasher film Halloween for the Michael Myers character. He would develop masks for the film's 2 sequels as well. Don also created special effect props and masks for films like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Comedy of Terrors, and the original Dune. Don came to be known as the godfather of Halloween. Today, Don Post Masks is owned by Trick or Treat Studios. He died in 1979 at age 77. Turning the compass south, just around the corner from Ronnie James Dio, we find the crypt of Lamont Bentley. The actor is best remembered for his role as Hakeem Campbell on the 90s sitcom Moesha, in some 127 episodes. He also played Rashad on South Central. On the big screen, Lamont played Crazy K in Tales from the Hood and C-Money in The Wash. But his life was cut tragically short in 2005 when he died from injuries sustained in a car accident. Lamont was just 31. The rain's really starting to come down now as we head into the southeasternmost courtyard. Along the northern wall of crypts, we find the final resting place of Jack Angel. He was another actor known for his voice work. Jack voiced characters for Hasbro, Hanna-Barbera, Nickelodeon, Disney Pixar, and more, with close to 200 credits to his name. He began his career as a popular radio personality here in Los Angeles before shifting to voice work. In the 80s, he voiced characters on Spider-Man, Super Friends, Voltron, Defender of the Universe, The Transformers, G.I. Joe, DuckTales, The Smurfs, and many more. Disney would bring him on to do additional voices on many of their animated films, like The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and so on. And when Pixar burst onto the scene in the 90s, Jack brought his voice there too, voicing Rocky Gibraltar and Shark on Toy Story.
Hey, who's got my hat?
Look, I'm Woody. Howdy, howdy, howdy.
He also voiced Thud on A Bug's Life. You also heard Jack in live-action films, playing Teddy on AI Artificial Intelligence. He passed away at age 90. I'm hiding from the rain under a forest lawn canopy. Thank goodness this thing is here because I did not bring an umbrella. And the rain has finally let up, so let's proceed into the sanctuary of treasured love. Low on the left wall, we find the unmarked crypt of a beloved actor who left us far too soon in recent years. This is the final resting place of Matthew Perry. He began his acting career making guest appearances on sitcoms like Charles in Charge, Silver Spoons, Growing Pains, Who's the Boss, and more. He had his first starring role as Chaz in Boys Will Be Boys in 1987. In 1994, he landed the role that would make him immortal, playing Chandler Bing in the popular 90s sitcom Friends, in some 235 episodes. The role earned him an Emmy nomination.
Chandler is my name, and, hi.
Yes, you said that.
Yes, I did, but what I didn't say was what I was about to say. What I wanted to say was, would you like to go out with me sometime? Thank you, good night.
Perry would also be nominated for his role on The West Wing. On the big screen, you saw Matthew Perry as Alex in Fools Rush In and Oz in The Whole Nine Yards. He'd also joined the ranks of talented comedic actors to portray Oscar Madison on screen in the 2015 adaptation of The Odd Couple. His memoir, Friends, Lovers, and The Big Terrible Thing, was released in 2022. Tragically, the following year, Matthew Perry would be dead at just 54. He was found unresponsive in his hot tub on the afternoon of October 28, 2023. He was pronounced dead a short time later. An investigation revealed that his death was caused by acute effects of the drug ketamine. Charges were brought against 5 people responsible for supplying him with such high doses of ketamine, including 2 doctors. 3 pled guilty, the other 2 have pleaded not guilty, awaiting trial. The events are documented in a recent Peacock release titled Matthew Perry, A Hollywood Tragedy. As of filming, his crypt remains unmarked. And finally, we make our way back toward the entrance to the newer Woodlands section, made to integrate more seamlessly with nature, the large stones on the ground hollowed out as receptacles for ashes. Here we find the grave of Bob Hastings. On radio in the 40s and 50s, Bob played Archie Andrews in the series based on the Archie comics. You fans of classic TV will remember Bob for his role as Lieutenant Carpenter on McHale's Navy, Kelsey on All in the Family, and Ed Foyle on Kitty Foyle. If Batman is more your style, you might remember Bob here for voicing Commissioner Gordon in Batman the Animated Series and its various incarnations in the 90s.
Well, here's to survival. Hopefully we'll be doing this again next New Year's Eve.
Hopefully.
And now, Joe, if I could get one of your famous cheesesteaks to go, I'll be ready to call it a night. Anything for you.
And Bob had something for you fans of daytime television as well, playing Captain Bert Ramsey on more than 200 episodes of General Hospital. He kept very busy with close to 200 credits to his name, appearing both in front of the camera and doing voice work for cartoons. Bob Hastings died from cancer at age 89. And that concludes our tour. What are some of your favorite memories of the stars we visited today? Share them in the comments below, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more famous grave tours. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Between our last tour here and this one, a pretty significant storm hit Los Angeles. In March 2023, strong winds downed a number of large trees here in the cemetery, which had stood here for decades. It was a pretty surreal sight to see these large trees that I had passed under for so many years lying dead on the ground, their root systems disturbing the graves and tossing the headstones that surrounded them. Forest Lawn moved quickly to remove the trees and restore the graves.